Hello, hello, everyone. In fact, there is everyone. How are we doing? Looks like we have some people on. Let me know if I can hear you. If I can hear you, let me know if I can hear you. or you can let me know if you can hear me. Wow, we're off to a brain foggy start. Hello, hello. Welcome all. Thanks for joining. Yada, yada, yada. Let's see. Who is with us? Who is with us? Let us see. Simon Hunter is with us. Hello, Simon. Hello, Agile Monk. Welcome back. At L Galaxan 86. Hello. Nigel Hobbs. You missed evening. I guess you guys were having a conversation. Yes. Vortak is here as well. Hello. James says, good job getting to intro to work this time. Yeah, I was screwing up the buttons last time, but, here we are. Nick Anquist is here. Hello. Oh, Laura Alexander. Oh, that's who you are. Oh, hello, Laura. Well, thanks for joining me, everyone. This is a second Saturday in a row. Normally, I wouldn't have done that because it was supposed to be last Wednesday that I was doing this, but couldn't do Wednesday because I had to go into Houston for some business. So it's today. So second Saturday in a row. But it seems to me that more people come for the Saturday ones anyway. So I may just shift to Saturdays. We'll see. Len Valencia's here. Hello. Welcome all. So, I have a few questions from some patrons, which I want to get to. And of course, if you guys have anything you want to ask, by all means, go ahead. This is your time. Robert Dean is here. Hello, Robert. Hello. Okay, so first of all, Adalada says, I think you said once that the ball investigation by Vale in season 4 of the main show here on the channel, the ball investigation by Vale in the palace would have played differently with the latest mechanics. How would you do it today? Thanks. Well, that's not entirely true. So, again, I don't want to turn this into a big Broken Empires discussion necessarily. But when I was doing season 4, I was, well, not really making it up as I went along, although parts of it I was testing things, right? So one of the things I was testing was this investigation mechanic, so to speak, which got rolled into the main system. So what you see in season 4, I think it's episode 3, where she's got to go to the Vizier's ball to try and discover the secret of what's going on in there and why the Vizier's been acting weird and all that kind of stuff. So what I did was I had her make various rolls based on her approach. If she would talk to somebody, then that would be one of the social skills that would trigger by the method in which she approached the NPC. Or if she, looked at some weird architecture, if there was some bizarre thing on the arches outside the palace, maybe she could do a craft artistic to determine if there's something weird about the carvings or whatever. Any skill that would reasonably work in that moment could be used towards the investigation. But how I did it was I had a very common feature that I use in the game, which is called a timer die. It's an option, but it's a good option. It ratchets up the tension of anything you're doing, whether that's something like an investigation or whether that's a social encounter or whatever. So how it worked was she got the first 3 rolls free, whatever it was, whatever she was talking to people or looking around or sneaking around or whatever it was. But after the 3rd roll, no matter what she did, I would roll the die. And if that die came up the total number of actions that she had already done or less, that means her cover was blown. So I called it a suspicion die, I think, at the time. So that is one method of doing investigations in the game. The other method is basically saying you treat it like an extended roll. In other words, you have to accumulate so many success levels, and every time you roll, there's a chance that maybe that timer die comes into play. Or maybe not. You don't have to use it. But the idea is that it's an extended roll so that when you hit your target, you've discovered what you're looking for. Or another variant is every 3 SLs you get uncovers a piece. And so you could theoretically put together the piece of the puzzle, so to speak, before you hit the target. So there's many, many ways of doing it, and it's all in the book. It's not like there's super rigid mechanics for this either. This is all largely suggestions. It's basically saying, here's how you might think about doing this if you want to use mechanics at all. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes you just want to completely wing it, and that's perfectly fine too. But there are investigation die mechanics in there that use that stuff. So it wasn't really different than how I do it in the game as presented today. It's just a variant, but it is in the game as it is. I think we have some other folks here. Martin Eyes, hello, hello. And Roll Rapide from Catalonia, hello, hello. Laura says, I keep hearing Brazier's ball. No. Vizier. Vizier. And Terry is joining us again. Hello, Terry. Welcome back. So a bunch of you are here. That's great. Okay, so James Wood, my patron down in South Africa, I think that is where he is, says, hi, Trevor. Not sure if I'll be able to attend today's stream. Are you here, James? Maybe you're here. Oh, you know what? I think you are here. Oh, maybe you're not. Well, whatever. If you're here, welcome. And if not, then I hope you see this on replay. So, a few questions to get the ball rolling. VO questions specifically. Yay, something not necessarily about the game. Have you ever narrated an audiobook? No, I haven't. I have looked into it. I almost did it, but it was way too much work for too little return. So I decided not to do it. Oh, you are here, James. Okay, great. Cool. Well, then I'm answering your questions right now. M. Hardy 99, hello from Walt Disney World. Hello. Are you literally at Disney World right now? Why aren't you on a ride? What are you doing talking to me? I mean, I'm pleased you're talking to me, but shouldn't you be standing in line for an hour and a half to take a 30-second ride on some Harry Potter thing or something? I don't know. I've never been, can you tell? You're literally in Disney World. Okay, well. Enjoy. I hope you can hear me over the din of the crowds. I presume there's a din of a crowd. I really got to get there one day. I've been to Disneyland a number of times because I used to live in LA, but I've never actually been to Disney World in Orlando. I'll put it on the list. By the way, how's my audio? I was doing a little futzing with the audio. Can you hear me okay? Am I loud and clear? Am I too soft, too loud, anything like that? I'd be curious to know. We have a bunch of questions coming in here, too, which is great. And I will try and get to everybody's. James's other question is, do you have a particular voice care routine that helps with your VO? No, just keep practicing. Yeah, I don't really do a lot of warm-ups or anything like that. Although you should, but I don't. How did you get started in VO is a whole video I could do, and perhaps I will. Do you have a favorite microphone? Well, it's not this one. This is the SM7B. This is the classic podcaster microphone. I don't like this mic. It requires way too much gain, way too much input, but it can handle a lot of abuse. My favorite microphone is the Neumann. What is it? Not the 103. The Neumann. The hell is it? It's like the classic. I'm completely blanking right now. Anyway, it's an industry standard. It's a very expensive microphone. It's like $4,000. That one I use all the time, and I use the Sennheiser 416 shotgun mic as well. I use that a lot in the show, actually, when I'm recording Me, Myself, and I. Those are industry standards, and they're fantastic. Okay, so everybody's saying that I am having good audio. Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, so game questions. Do you play video games? If yes, do you have a favorite? I do, although not as much as I used to. I'm not a crazy video game junkie. Some that I have absolutely adored are the original Baldur's Gate. 1 and 2, that was transformational. The original Dragon Age as well, which was Baldur's Gate spiritual successor. I despised Baldur's Gate 3, and I know that's heresy in a lot of circles, but I hated it. I shut it off after a couple of hours. I hated the characters. I hated the performances. I hated the casting. I hated the gameplay. I hated everything about it. It did not feel at all like Baldur's Gate to me. Maybe I would have thought it was okay if it was some property that was completely separated from the Forgotten Realms. But even so, I don't think that was the problem. I think the problem, I just hated the characters. I wanted them all to die. I was like, just all of you die, including my character. You all suck. I hate you all. So I don't know what happened there. And everyone talked about, oh my God, the gameplay's great. You can do anything and you can just and that's all fine. but I was not invested. I did not care at all. I could not have cared less about the characters or the plot or anything like that. Plus the fact, I know this is a 5e derivative and it's crazy superhero fantasy, but you start off in this game. So for those of you who maybe don't know, the original Baldur's Gate started off, you're like a student in Candlekeep, like a library, and your master gets killed and you have to go into the world by yourself and into the wide world and find out what happened. It's like an investigation thing, and it's a scary thing. It's like a real zero to hero thing, but you start zero, man. You start at zero and you explore the world as a nobody, as someone who knows nothing about it, and it was fantastic. This game, Baldur's Gate 3, you start on a ship of an Illithid ship, and you're literally being chased into the hells by red dragons, and I'm just like, no, this is everything I hate about 5e. Jettison, delete. So not that one, James. That's not my favorite game. Loved The Witcher 3. Thought The Witcher 3 was one of the greatest games ever made. Loved Skyrim, of course. How can you not love Skyrim? Kingdom Come Deliverance. I started the second one, but it was the first one. I loved it. It's a medieval, it's not a fantasy, it's a historical medieval, almost a simulator, actually, which is cool. Anyway, do you enjoy escape rooms is your other question? Not really. You know why? I don't like to voluntarily put myself in high-pressure situations, and those things are always high-pressure situations. I hate that. But some of them are fun. What are some of your favorite tabletop games that aren't RPGs? You mentioned Fate of the Fellowship. Yeah, Fate of the Fellowship is a board game that I love. Favorite tabletop games that aren't RPGs? Cthulhu Death May Die is one of my favorites. Oh my God, we've played the hell out of that one. Love it. Love the modular nature of it. It's so good. So good. Have you heard of or played ISS Vanguard by Awakened Realms? No, I've not, but Awakened Realms is responsible for a lot of very, very cool stuff, and I'm all behind them. Robert asks, so how much or little did audiobook work pay? Well, this was many years ago. This is probably 2014. I don't remember the exact number. I just remember that when you looked at all of the hours that it would take, because how it worked back then, or the contract that I would have been working under, I would have had to do everything myself. So I would have, there was no engineer, no studio. I'd be doing it out of my own studio, which means I'd have to read the book. I'd have to make all my own notes. I'd have to make all my own decisions, take no direction, and then record everything and engineer everything and edit everything. Now that's many hours of work for even the shortest of books. And I looked at the pay, and I don't remember the exact number, but I remember it came out to very little per hour. And I was like, this is not worth it. So I didn't. Have you tried Brindlewood Bay for Murder Mysteries games? No. I've heard a lot of people talk about this one. I don't know much about it other than apparently it's like, what do they say? It's like Murder, She Wrote meets Call of Cthulhu. But the principle, as far as I understand it, is... Oh, there's my light freaking out again. The principle, as far as I understand it, is... the players are little old ladies, and they're doing this investigation, but whatever they think the answer to the mystery is, that just is the answer. Now, it's got to be more complex than that. It has to, because that's just stupid. So I would love to hear. Exactly. I am very legitimately interested in it because it seems so different, and so many people I respect speak very highly of it. Sounds like a big story game to me, which I'm always hesitant to get involved with, but I would definitely look at it. I would definitely have a look at it. Because, I've been surprised many times. That's why I don't like to judge things until I've seen them, preferably played them, right? I think that's important. Good. Simon wasn't a fan of Baldur's Gate 3 either. And Pitbull, welcome back, Pitbull. I was really bored by Baldur's Gate 3. Never felt the tug to keep going. Yeah, me too. I just didn't care. And the half-elf vampire dude, oh, he could die in a fire quick. And apparently in the game you have the option to kill these people, which I should have taken. Maybe I would have enjoyed it more if I had just slaughtered all of the NPCs before they could have a chance to bore me. Martin says, oh, I love the characters. I did think you've been all kidnapped by mind flayers and have to get rid of it. Quite a nice hook to get a party together for. That's true. It is an interesting hook. For me, it's just way too high fantasy, and that's just a personal preference. A lot of people love that stuff. For me, it represents everything I hate about 5e, which is it's crazy, over the top, superheroic fantasy, and I'm bored by that immediately. What about Divinity? Divinity, the video game? I played that with a friend of mine for a while. Now, which one was it? Divinity Original Sin? The remaster, maybe? Does that sound right? It's where you play with someone else, right? You can play simultaneously, so we both play a couple of adventures and you go through, and it was interesting. Again, I felt that the approach to the direction was annoying. They, like, all of the NPCs and all of the dialogue was super cheeseball, really over the top, really, really silly, and that kills my sense of immersion, and I resent that, when I'm playing these games, because I want to be drawn in. I want to feel like there's something at stake here for the characters. Not everything has to be a, Game of Thrones level political drama or anything. But I just felt it was a bit silly for me. And So I never finished it. I got bored of it. Death May Die is a great game. Yeah, and it's produced in seasons. So you've got all these different expansion boxes. It's a new season, and the season has a bunch of different scenarios in it with a new elder god and a new set of. So it is so great, and because the nature of that game is you can play any of these characters in any combination you want, and there's so many different variables to each episode that everyone's completely different. So the infinite replayability of that game, it's so good. It's so good. I loved the history section and the codex in Kingdom Come Deliverance, but those controls, man, oof, I ended up just booting up Crusader Kings 3 instead. Yeah, Kingdom Come Deliverance was frustrating if you tried to approach it like any other game. If you're like, oh, I've got a sword, I want to go fight someone. Well, it's not that easy. It was literally fighting a duel every single time. You had to time your parries and your strikes, and you had to aim and all that stuff. And it took a lot of getting used to. And yes, there was an exploit in the first one, especially, where you could basically, there was it might even exist in the second one. I forget exactly what it was, but it was basically, it was an exploit where you could just like, oh, if I just push into the guy and then push him back, I'll immediately hit him in max damage or whatever it was. So that sucked because, okay, well, now you've got the god cheat code, right? So that's no good. But I remember in the beginning of that game, when your village gets attacked and you're on this horse and you're being attacked by these I think they're Turkish warriors. I can't remember. And I made the mistake in my first playthrough of trying to stop and rescue this woman who was being assaulted. And I immediately got killed. Like there's no way. And so the only way I could deal with it was to run. I had to get on the horse and ride as hard as I could while these cumans, that's what they're called, were on my tail and shooting arrows at me, and I got hit a few times. And it was terrifying, the way it should be. Terrifying. It took me many, 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 many hours to get anywhere near good enough to be able to face a wolf in combat, I loved it. Oh, it was so good. So good. I had so much fun with Brindlewood Bay, and I usually can't stand Powered by the Apocalypse games. The investigative mechanics were a little weird, but my group got the hang of it. So I didn't realize it was a PBTA game. I didn't realize it was an Apocalypse game. I guess I shouldn't be surprised. So many games are. But you say that the investigative mechanics were a little weird. Do tell. Do illuminate me, because I'm very curious. I'm very curious as to how it works. Awakened Realms is amazing in many ways. Nemesis, fantastic game. Nemesis is basically the Alien board game, but, changed enough to not get sued. It's fantastic. Nemesis is fantastic. Tainted Grail, Grim Coven Stalker. I know Tainted Grail a little bit. I've never played it. But yeah, Awakened Realms does a lot of great stuff. The Lord of the Rings Journeys in Middle-earth is also a lot of fun. Now, there's so many Lord of the Rings games. Is that a card game? Is it a board game? Is it a role-playing game? There's so many. Here we go. Brindlewood Bay is Powered by the Apocalypse, based with moves based on collecting clues. After you accumulate a certain number of clues, players can come up with a solution. If they roll high enough, their theory is right. Huh. And what if this theory is wrong? Like, it just seems to me like okay, the players come up with something more interesting than the GM could, and therefore the GM says that's better than what I came up with, so let's just assume that's right. That's an old technique, by the way. That's an old GM trick, which you never want to overuse. It seems to me that Brindlewood Bay is a game that completely relies on that old trick. But I can't. It can't be that simple. It's got to be more to it than that. I've read The Dragonbone Chair. Oh, one of the best. Tad Williams, Dragonbone Chair. The series is called Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn. If you haven't read it, check it out. I've read The Dragonbone Chair since the Journey Mechanics chat of yesterweek, and it was definitely a Journey's book. It sure was. Just like Lord of the Rings, right? Where it's all about getting there. All of the things that happen to you on the road. Thinking about literary inspiration for RPGs. Other than perhaps The Witcher, is there anything that involves D&D style monster hunting where identifying the powers is key? Thinking about literary inspiration for RPGs, other than The Witcher, is there anything that involves D&D style monster hunting where identifying the powers is key? I don't know. I don't know offhand. Not sure. Deadliest system ever played? For me, it's definitely Pendragon. Okay. As I said before, Pendragon is one of those games that kind of got away from me over the years. I know it, but I've never actually run it. Deadly, I wasn't aware that it was super deadly. If you like map-making style games, Cartograph is an RPG, but you create the world on a map as you travel. Interesting. I can't think of much, so are your more SNS solos that way because uncovering weird powers is harder? Having trouble following where we're talking about here. There's many threads. Are your more SNS solos? SNS, what, Sword and Sorcery? What do you mean by that, Robert? It's a board game that borrows a lot from this is the Lord of the Rings. It's a board game that borrows a lot from RPGs with an app to run the enemies and encounters similar to Death May Die. Oh, then I have not played it. I do not know. Brindlewood Bay, if they're wrong, they have to keep collecting new clues and make up a new theory. Okay, that sounds frustrating to me because they come up with this idea, which is based on just their own inventiveness with retconning the meaning of clues. That I have no problem with because that's how I run Me, Myself, and Die. But then they roll to see if they're right. That reminds me a little bit of Ironsworn. Roll to see if you fulfill the quest. And if you don't, then there's a complication. So if you're right, then your retconning explanations were correct. Hooray, you win a prize. But if you're wrong, you got to scrap it and start again to come up with new interpretations of the same clues. I don't know. It's not sounding good to me. Powered by the Apocalypse, as I understand it, is more fast and loose mechanics where the GM reacts, so there's no wrong answer. Yeah, Powered by the Apocalypse has very specific moves, as they're called, where the players are the only ones that roll. GM doesn't roll. And whatever they roll is typically spelled out for them based on the definitions of the move. So the rules of most of those games are right there on your character sheet. But the GM is just interpreting things. I had a lot of success with running Powered by the Apocalypse games, which I didn't think I would, and I didn't think I'd like, but I find them fun. Because I like interpreting things on the fly. I'm a big improv guy. I'm a big improv GM. So for me, like playing even Dungeon World, which I know a lot of people don't think is a good manifestation of the Powered by the Apocalypse rules, but it's the one I'm most familiar with. I had a blast with that by interpreting events based on what the characters rolled. Something that Powered by the Apocalypse does in theory, in philosophy, is something that I absolutely do believe as a GM, and it's something that I hard code into the Broken Empires as well, which is the game, the totality of the game, is that the players push on the world, that they're trying to achieve something, right? They're trying to overcome obstacles in pursuit of a goal. They're pushing on the world. They exert pressure on the world as they move through it, trying to achieve something. The world's resisting them. So when they push on the world pushes back somewhere else. And that's really, as far as I understand it, that's how Powered by the Apocalypse the philosophy works. This is why you could have a situation where, the thief is trying to pick the locked door in the tower. And if he fails, that doesn't necessarily mean he failed to open the door. It means that there's a new complication. That complication should be related to what just happened. So, for example, he fails his roll, which means he opens the door, but at that moment, the guards come around the corner, right? But if you had a situation where he fails to pick the lock and in a kingdom over, a volcano goes off, well, okay, that's not related. That's weird. I know some people who run the game like that. But I like the idea that the mechanics hardcode the idea that when you push on the world pushes back. And I think it's a very elegant way of doing that. I think that Powered by the Apocalypse is extremely limited in terms of where you can go and grow because it's only 2d6 plus mod, right? There's very little room to move, so they're ideal for shorter campaigns. Again, that's fine. But yeah, the GM is always reacting to what the players are doing. And I like that. I just started down the Wheel of Time rabbit hole. Listened to the first one as an audiobook and waiting for 2 and 3 to arrive in the mail. Yeah, Wheel of Time. I never actually did finish that. I think I got up to, I want to say Path of Daggers, which is maybe book 7 out of the 14, was it, finally? Robert Jordan died after book, was it 10? And then Brandon Sanderson, I believe it was, it took over. And originally, it was going to be one final book. But, of course, well, no, he's got to stretch it out. So now there's, 12, 14 books, whatever there is. Never finished them. I really enjoyed them. What I found about Wheel of Time, though, that's another travel and journey-based series, which is fantastic. I really like the characters. I like the world. I like the setup. I despised what the TV show did. I thought that it looked like a high school or community theater production, and everyone was horribly miscast. Everything. It was a disaster and a waste of time and money. And it was a disservice to the source material, in my humble opinion. But the books were great. And the only problem with the books that I found was that they were a bit repetitive. They had a very similar pattern for the first couple. Something happens, the characters journey. They get to the end. They think they found the big bad guy. They defeat the big bad guy. Oh, turns out it wasn't the big bad guy. It was just some minor guy. And then away you go. And that kind of repeats a bit for a while. And then it comes into its own. I remember Lord of Chaos, I believe, was the 5th book. I remember that book just blew me away. They really messed with the patterns there. But it's good. And I should go back and read it again. That's the other thing. The books would come out like a new one every year or something. Maybe not that frequently. I forget. But they would come out. And so it had been just long enough that I'd kind of forgotten about the previous book. So I'd have to go back and reread the previous book. Well, what that meant was by the time I got to book 7, I had reread the first 5 books 6 times, which was ridiculous. But it's been so long now that I've forgotten everything about them, pretty much. So I should probably just go back and read them again. Read the whole series through this time. I think it'd probably be worth it. I did enjoy it. I died in the tutorial of Pendragon's Grand Campaign. Wow. Where you swear your vows and then go on your first mission to save a village from bandits to learn the mechanics. I learned all right. Wow. I'm really curious about that now. Is that in the new starter set that they released last year? Let me know, Martin and Eyes. Let me know. The solos seem more inspired by human-centric swords and sorcery stories than the D&D style monster hunting. Is that because it works better or because you like the style better? Oh, in relation to your question before. The solos seemed more inspired. The solo seasons I did more inspired by humano-centric swords and sorcery stories than the D&D style monster. Okay. I wouldn't actually call what I do sword and sorcery. To me, sword and sorcery has a very specific feel, and I don't think that's my world. Sword and sorcery to me is Conan, right? And Conan, I guess what other people call swords and sandals, maybe. I'm not actually a big fan of Conan. I know, heresy. I think he's kind of dull. I don't think there's much to the character. But I'm not a big sword and sorcery guy. I mean, I came up with D&D, so those tropes are firmly embedded, right? The fighter, wizard, thief, cleric group on the frontier going off to explore the wilderness. But I also came up with Lord of the Rings. So the epic journey and the epic plot and story, dare I say it, was always part of it as well. Whereas sword and sorcery never fell into that to me. And I know this is probably splitting hairs and everybody has slightly different definitions of this stuff. But for me, I never really called what I did sword and sorcery. But to address what you're asking, humanocentric swords and sorcery stories, then the D&D style monster hunting. So that I want to speak to, yeah. All of my games tend to be more human-centric. They tend to be more quote-unquote grounded, quote-unquote realistic. That's not a very good word to use when you have magic and dragons. But they are humanocentric. They always have been. Not that I don't have elves and dwarves and halflings and all that stuff in most worlds. It's just that they don't really feature prominently. Now, why is that? If I look back over my career as a GM and I think of things like Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay First Edition, late 80s, very humanocentric setting. It's the Holy Roman Empire, early Renaissance. It's Germany, right? Late medieval, early Renaissance Germany. But there's elves, and there's orcs, and there's halflings, and there's, dragons and ogres and chaos and mutants. Skaven. Although nobody believes in Skaven. So it worked. It worked because even though the world had those elements, the majority of the world felt believable because it was rooted in something that had an historical analogy. So for me, I could see it. I could see Gothic Germany. I could see that. I could see the Black Forest. I could see Grimm's fairy tales. I could see all of that stuff. And in all of those things, it's humans that are the main characters. I relate more to humans. Why? Because I am one. And I can see through the eyes of a human much quicker than I can through the eyes of a dwarf or an elf. Now, it's fun to try and see a world through the eyes of a dwarf or an elf. Of course it is. That's why we enjoy playing them. But it's much harder, right? And I also think that, like in a One Ring game, which obviously takes place in Middle-earth, people playing elves, they're kind of asking for it because elves are inherently alien to humans. They do not think the same way as a human. I have never seen at any game table an elf played in the way that I would say, yeah, that feels like something an elf would do, like a Tolkien elf, right? Because they're alien. They're above us. They're on a whole different thing, man. They're on a whole different level. So I'm not saying you shouldn't play elves. I'm just saying that as far as I'm concerned, I always felt that it was a real challenge that I always wanted to do justice to play an elf, right? And I have, but the temptation is always to fall back into more human tropes and human reactions. For me, I was always like, okay, but would an elf react this way? Well, of course, we don't know. They don't exist. So you have to make your decisions. And in the end, we are human beings, and we react with our characters the way a human being would react because we don't know any other way to do it. But all of that to say, the whole monster hunting thing of D&D, I feel to be largely an empty pursuit, a hollow pursuit. For me, my games are about the characters. They're about the people. They're about what they're trying to achieve. That's why the OSR is kind of a hollow enterprise for me as well. Because in the OSR, typically speaking, and because of its wargame roots, remember, that's where D&D came from, was wargames, where they literally said, what if each of these pawns didn't represent a unit of troops? What if it was a single troop? Well, that attitude still pervades everything to do with D&D and the OSR, which is, and this may sound harsh, you're not really playing a character. You're playing a pawn. A pawn that is easily killed and is easily re-rolled if you have to replace them. Oh yeah, roll up a new character, get back in the dungeon. That's all fine and good and fun, but to me, it's not even really role-playing. You're just moving a pawn around a board through a dungeon looking to get money to level up, and it's all very hollow and empty. And fun, it can be fun for a while, but I get bored with it easily, very quickly. So that idea in the OSR that you're really not playing a character, not really, because you don't want to invest too much in your character because they're going to die. They're probably going to die. And yes, there's a lot of you who will say, what are you talking about? I love my OSR character and he lasted to level 5 or level 10. He's the greatest and I told the greatest stories ever and had the greatest experience and awesome. Great. Congratulations. I'm saying in general, the philosophy of the OSR lends itself to an attitude that you don't get involved with your character because the lethality is so high. and that the stakes are so low because you're really not about anything other than getting treasure. And this is hard-coded into games experience systems. You get XP by getting gold, by hauling treasure out of a dungeon. That's all fine and good. But that's all your character's about? Is collecting stuff? That's why I gave up on AD&D back in the 80s. Because when I realized characters are only differentiated by the stuff they get. Well, my fighter has a +3 sword of fire. Well, my fighter has a +2 sword, but it's +4 against goblins. Okay, so what? Who are they? What have they done? What are their objectives? What are their loves, their hatreds? What are their passions? I come at it from a very human-centric perspective. I always have. To me, the quest was never about go get the thing. It was about the friends we made along the way. It was about what do we learn as characters on the way? How do we develop? How do we change? What can I say? I've been in show business since I was 5 years old, so it was ingrained in my head that a character's journey is about change. It's about coming up against obstacles, and it's about overcoming those obstacles, and in the overcoming, they change. They become something else. They become someone else. And OSR mechanics don't do that. OSR mechanics say, no. All you are is a set of numbers and a bunch of gold pieces that you haul out of a dungeon. Okay, I get bored instantly with that. And they're fun. They are fun, like I said, for a while. But I was running a very rules-light game recently, just as a palate cleanser. And of course, right away, I'm adding a bunch of rules because rules light, I get bored of like instantly. But as we were going through it, like after the third session, which was super fun, it was like an old school hex crawl and stuff. But as we were going through it, I was like, what's the point of this? This is about exploring a world. Okay, that's fine. I'm the GM. I get to make the world up as we go. So that's very satisfying to me. And, you know, the love of exploration from the player's perspective. We get to explore, to put new hexes on the map, to explore the map and see what's out there. That's one of the most fundamental human drives. So I get it, right? Like I totally understand that. There's a real joy in saying, what are these 3 dots on the map over here? That's an old ruin. I want to travel there and see what's there. That's awesome. And in an old school kind of hex crawl game or exploration-based game, you can absolutely do that. You should do that. That's what makes it great. But always I come to the point where I am ultimately more interested in this. I hate to use this word story because of all the baggage it has, but I am ultimately more interested in how the characters change on their journey than I am in the world itself. I love the world and I love making it up, and I love the interplay of characters and world, and I love a consistent human-centric world. I love a world that makes sense. I love a world that the players can predict things based on their expectations, you know? Gravity always works, pulls things down. It doesn't go up. Water flows downhill, not uphill, that kind of basic stuff. But for me, ultimately, a West Marches game, a satisfying West Marches game, would be, yes, the characters are exploring the wilderness and they're exploring dungeons and ruins and they're putting new things on the map and they're carving out new kingdoms out of the wilderness or whatever they are, whatever they're doing. But more importantly, they themselves are changing. They themselves are learning things. And the only way to have that happen in a game is if the characters feel that there's something at stake for them personally. If they have a personal connection to what's going on. It's the only way it works. That can be something super simple. But let's look at Dragonbane, okay? Love Dragonbane, great game. The default campaign setting that is included with the starter box, it's not even a starter box, it's just a box set, because it's not a starter rules, it's a full rules. I'm telling you, it's a great game. If you haven't seen my playthrough of Dragonbane, go check it out on the channel. In that adventure, the assumption is that the characters are coming from outside. They're coming to this area, this cordoned off area. It's a big area, but it's separated by mountains. The characters are coming into the area from outside, and they stumble across the plot, right? Now, the plot is handled very well, and I love it. I think it's great. But the characters, by default, have no connection to any of the people or places or things in the campaign. They're just outsiders. So the default hook is you hear about this thing that can make you rich and powerful. Right? It's the classic OSR response. Fine. But that bores me to tears very quickly. I want my characters to feel a sense of stake. I want them to feel like there's something else for them to fight for. So, what do? One of them, so they're going into this place. They know that there's a small village on the other side of the mountains that they're headed there. That's how the campaign begins. You give one of them a connection to the innkeeper. This woman named Vaughn or Vonhild or something like that. She's a cousin. And she's always said, if you're ever this way, come and stay with me. Something as simple as that. Now they have a personal connection to that NPC. It's a familial connection in this case. It doesn't have to be. But there's some kind of connection. Now, what you do with that is totally up to you, but it's there. And if the player wants to seize on that, and most players will, because most players actually do want a personal connection to something for their character. Most of them, even those dyed-in-the-wool OSR players, will tell you it's a better experience if you feel like, you're fighting for something. They may not use those words, but they're thinking it, even if they don't know they're thinking it. So you get a personal connection. Another thing might be, they're trying to find this artifact. Okay, that's the big thing with this campaign is they're trying to find pieces of this artifact. Well, maybe one of those characters is coming from outside, but has a personal reason for wanting to find that artifact. And again, it doesn't have to be complicated. Maybe they believe that artifact can save the life of a loved one. It has some power. Sure. It doesn't matter what it is. It has to be something that connects them and drives them and makes them want to engage beyond just the accumulation of wealth and power. Because while that is a very, very fine and usable motivation, it gets stale so quickly in my games and at my table. I don't care about wealth and power after a while. I'm just bored of it. But that's me. That's just me. Anyway, all of this to say, Robert, to answer this question, the reason why D&D monster hunting style didn't emerge in the game is because hunting monsters for its own sake is boring to me. Clearing out dungeons for its own sake is boring to me. There has to be a reason. If you look at Season 1, when Simon comes across his first quote-unquote dungeon, which is that undead temple, he was immediately tied to it in terms of stakes. Why? Because he discovered that his parents, his missing parents, some secret about their situation is to be found in this temple. Suddenly there's stakes for him. Suddenly he's interested in exploring this temple, not to get rich and powerful, but to find his parents. Now I'm interested in it too. Now I have a much more robust reason for wanting to go and explore that other hallway and open that door and search for secret doors and fight the denizens and, find the stuff, find the treasure. That's all good, but that's not why I'm there. I'm there to find out what happened to my parents. That was Simon's thing. So with a standard monster hunting D&D setup, you don't have personal stakes. It's not important. Money, gold, experience, power. Me, I much prefer that. And if you look at Season 2, Ironsworn, the entire purpose of Ironsworn, the entire purpose of that campaign was because Arn had to go home to fulfill a vow that he abandoned. You don't get much more personal than that. As it turned out, it was a vow to save his village and blah, 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 blah. Season 3, this epic pirate island spanning Pirates of the Caribbean style quest of Edbert's was all about him trying to discover why he wound up on that beach alone with no memory. What was going on? It was about him trying to find out the truth about the ghost that was haunting him and to resolve all of that. And in the course of that, he had adventures and he met NPCs and he went through dungeons, literal dungeons. But all of those things were always driving back towards that central set of stakes. Always, always, always driving back towards what do these characters really want? And I've encapsulated that in the Broken Empires. That's why you only gain experience by pursuing your goals. I have a whole chapter about that, which I released to backers in an update a couple months ago. An early version of it. So I believe that is what separates kind of bog standard OSR play from what I'm talking about is the idea that your characters are the ones that are interesting. Now, that does not mean that they should have special metagame currency to shape the narrative or to change details of the setting or to get out of death or God forbid that there's no real, that the death isn't on the table. I know a lot of people like to play that. You know, well, I don't like my characters to die, so that's off the table. If you're playing a game where combat is a thing and swords come out and, you know, you can certainly kill the enemies, but the enemies can't kill you because of the story, to me, that also bores me because now there's no risk. Before there was nothing at stake. Now there's no risk. Oh, yes, but there's far more interesting things to happen than death. But death has to be part of that outcome as well. Right? There's ways to handle death too. Even if you're looking at this, you can allow someone, you know, a brave last stand as you know they're about to die to do something cool and heroic on the way out if you want. You totally can. When I have had characters die in games, I have explicitly worked very hard to give them a good death. Now, it doesn't always work, but you can ask your GM for that. You can say, you know, if I'm going out right now, I want to go out with a bang. Can I do this? And either they'll let you or not, or they'll work with you or they won't. The good ones will. The bad ones won't. You don't need special mechanics for that, in my estimation. All you need is a desire to pursue your goals and the mechanics to help you do that, obviously. Anyway, long answer, Robert. Martin and I's, this is about Pendragon. One of the reasons is that even though you're a knight, if you fight an unarmed footman, there's still a chance they can get very lucky and critical hit you and roll the damage to kill you. Yeah, and that's the way it should be, as far as I'm concerned. Every game should have that. That's what I really loved about Warhammer 1st Edition. Exploding dice, right? Was it exploding dice? I don't know. It's been so long since I looked at it. I seem to remember it was exploding dice. It was always a d6 damage, I think. But what that meant was even a lowly goblin could get lucky and kill you. What does that do? It puts the risk back in combat, because if you are in a contest for your very life with another being that's trying to kill you, you should feel that tension. And if you know, this is the problem I always had with D&D. It's always a problem I had with D&D and I have with OSR games to this day. The bandit's got you dead to rights with a crossbow. He says to you, don't move or else I'll shoot. And you, being a 5th level fighter with 40 hit points, realize that crossbow does 1d8 hit points. And you say, to hell with him, charge. You make a decision that's based purely on the meta mechanics. Well, that's bad role-playing, you might say. Well, you really shouldn't. You should perceive the crossbow as a deadly threat. Yeah, but it's not. The only way that it is a deadly threat is if, you know, it is a deadly threat. And the mechanics of D&D say, yeah, because what's a hit point? Well, it's luck and experience, and that's why I've always hated hit points. In Warhammer, if some bandit puts a crossbow to you, yeah, it's very possible you're dead. Or in Savage Worlds, it's very possible you're dead, even though there's lots of meta currencies there to help prevent that. In my game, also possible, although not likely to be killed outright, but certainly reduced into, set into shock, and you're basically dead at that point. So I don't disagree with these kind of philosophies in games. Now, of course, what it does, Marty and I, is it makes the game deadly, and sometimes you're on the receiving end of that and you die. Can't really have it both ways, you know? So that's what happened to me. A random bandit got really lucky and killed me on my first mission as a knight. But here you are telling the story of it. So, kind of cool, right? In a different way, in a way you didn't expect to have happen. Pendragon, much like Harn, you are not immediately a powerful character. It's a legacy of your journey from squire to knight, so like many of those games, you are in lots of combat early, you can die. Yeah, well, it's just a different version of Zero to Hero, right? You know, if you're a first level character in D&D, yeah. What did we figure out in 5e? That up until 3rd level, you can be taken out very easily, which is the criticism a lot of people had of the Minds of Phandelver, because you're playing first level characters, and the first thing that happens is a possible goblin ambush, at which point you can't do anything other than get shot, and a single arrow from a goblin at level 1 could easily kill you. That's fun. It's also about building a dynasty over several decades, so it's kind of expected that you'll die and then play as your children. I love this. We did that in The One Ring as well. The One Ring also lends itself to that. In our first campaign, which took 6 years of real time, but 30 years of game time, one of the players, his character had to retire because he was becoming corrupted by the shadow, so he removed himself and came in as another character. And that character eventually got killed by a dragon, but his third character was the son of one of the original characters who was still around. And you can only have that in generational games, right? It was so cool. It was very, very cool. This is the first edition Pendragon. I didn't even know there was a second until you mentioned it 2 weeks ago. Yeah, apparently they redid it. I mean, the version I have in the library, I'm pretty sure is the first edition. It's an old box set. But they re-released it. Was it last year? I saw it at the Gen Con booth. Almost picked it up. You mentioned Pirate Borg last week. I bought the book and fell in love. I found a ton of solo plays for Pirate Borg that are honestly the best RPGs I've played this far. Thank you for the rec. You're welcome. Pirate Borg is fun. Again, to me, it's system light, it's rules light, so I would be bored of it very quickly. But Pirate Borg isn't about the system. It's about the whole presentation. It's about the whole feel. It's about the entire... It's about the art. It's about the setting. It's about the atmosphere. But it's quite a product. Quite a product. I think the current Pendragon is 6. I think you're right, Robert. I think that's correct. I don't know what edition of Pendragon is playing. 10 years. Yeah, who knows? I don't think Pendragon has changed that much. I think it's a lot like Call of Cthulhu, that it pretty much is the same game that it always was. Pirates hunting treasure and battling the apocalyptic abominations of the abyss and fighting in the high seas and even battling a crew of the undead. What's not to love? Yes, it's fun. Absolutely. I think you said before, Trevor, the Broken Empires game you designed is not a high fantasy monsters attacking, but more humanoid battling humanoids and politics or world domination, etc. Yes, that's the default assumption. That doesn't mean you can't have a game that's about monster hunting. You can, if that's what you want. It's just that, a lot of the mechanics are designed for human-centric kind of stuff, right? You can have complex social interactions with a tribe of orcs, although it'd be hard because orcs in the Broken Empires are 100% savage killers. But yeah, it's designed for that. It's far more human-centered. Who needs sword and sorcery when you've got scallywags and krakens? Yar. Hello, Eric. Welcome, 235. That was 10 minutes ago. I've been going on a bit, as I do. How are we doing for time? 54 minutes. Related then, I really like the dunk and egg stories. So I want to start a solo where I'm a knight exploring getting into trouble. What system, not Pendragon, do you think could do a dunk campaign? Well, it's got to be Hardmaster. It's got to be Hardmaster. If you're going to play a knight in a world like Westeros, you got to do Hardmaster or the Broken Empires, but the Broken Empires isn't technically out yet. Although I think Pendragon would work. If you're going to do solo and you're worried about getting killed, I know this contradicts with what I said before about death being on the table, but it's just you at the table. If you really feel like the game is too dangerous for the kind of game you want to have, it's just you. So if you get killed, then say you don't get killed, but give yourself some other consequence instead. Give yourself a lingering wound or something like that. You're left for dead. It's your game. If you want to explore the narrative of this character and you don't want him to get killed off too soon before you get a chance to do it, then don't. No one's going to stop you. You're not really cheating, Just do whatever you want, right? I'd say go back, do Pendragon again. It's designed for that, But Hardmaster, if you like a lot of complex battle rules and wound rules and infection rules and lovely things like this. So my wife's favorite mechanics in games are alchemy. She loves potion crafting and makes characters that are master alchemists. Would you mind going over the alchemy rules of the Broken Empires? Oh, boy. They are there. I'm not a huge alchemy guy, but obviously enough to put it in here. There's two variants. There's the natural potions, which are typically about healing, And then there's the magical creation of alchemical stuff. The natural potions anybody can make using various skills. You got to find the ingredients. And there's a whole table in that section of the book about the various seasons, the various kinds of plants and things you can find, the various ingredients you can find. It's all the rules about brewing and how many doses you get and what they do, and that's all there, which is essentially a series of extended rules, to put it, bluntly. But alchemy, weave magic alchemy, it's a type of enchantment. So enchantment is, I don't want to get too much into this because there's a lot. The magic system in the game covers everything. It's freeform. So you can do all kinds of stuff. And one of those things you can do is basically put spells on items to give them bonuses and stuff, right? If you want to make the equivalent of a +1 sword, you can do that with magic. It's not going to last forever. Unless you do a ritual to make it last forever, but that's a whole other thing. But sometimes you want to put very specific powers into items and make what we would consider like D&D style magic items. That's what enchantment does, and there's rules for that. It's very costly, and it deals with fraying and all that kind of stuff. But then there's alchemy, and an alchemy is a simplified form of enchantment, specifically performed on liquids to create spell effects in potion form. So it's specifically about making potions. Like enchantment, it binds a spell into a physical vessel so that the substance itself becomes the caster when consumed. That'll make sense when you see the total rules. Unlike permanent enchantments, however, alchemy always creates single-use effects and does not accumulate fraying. So it's a much simpler way it's a much less dangerous way of creating magical effects through potions. What else can I tell you? You need a laboratory, you need a workspace. If you have a better lab, detailed formulae, or careful patience, you get all kinds of bonuses. And basically, the spell you want to create is going to have a total cost. Like anytime you cast a spell, it's going to have a total cost. That's the cost of controlling it. So the higher the cost, the more reagents you need. And reagents are specific things you find in the world, and you can go, whole quests can be going looking for magical reagents. But then you have to brew the potion. You have to gather ingredients, including the necessary reagents, and prepare the brewing apparatus. You spend a whole day brewing and then cast a spell and hope that it works. And then it gives you doses. And sometimes they're unstable. If a weave reaction occurs during this process, it means the potion is unstable, which could have various effects. And then there's alchemical aids. There's a refined laboratory that gives you a bonus to your bind roll. There's a master alchemist laboratory that gives you some other bonuses. Formula notes, and of course, just being very patient. So, yes, the answer is yes. there are alchemical rules. And that's, the broad strokes of how they work. Pirate Borg is amazing. There are many supplements to add to that dark Caribbean flavor. So good. Yes, it is. Luke has done a great job with that game. Speaking of elves, I'm looking forward to the Harn Kingdom of Avail to come out. New hardback edition. Yeah, Columbia Games has been slowly re-releasing the old material with new art and updated information too, but with hardbacks over the past few years. Beautiful, beautiful sets. I have, I think, all of them so far. I think, yeah. If you're into Harn, then go check those out for sure. These insights are in part why I like to come to these chats. Are you talking about my insights, or are you talking about the other people commenting? I don't remember what I said. I talk a lot of rot, don't I? As far as a world that makes sense, monsters with a bunch of random powers would seem hard to fit in, e.g. D&D. Yeah, I mean, you could be forgiving of it, like with Forgotten Realms. It's a vessel for the rules. It's a vessel for the rule set. So the world is going to have to accommodate all these crazy monsters with powers. And as long as you accept that and you're good with it, then it's fine. It's fun. I don't get too crazy. If I'm playing a game in a Forgotten Realms world or something like it, I don't get too picky. It's fine. Oh, there's a monster here with these weird powers that, well, what's it doing in the dungeon? How does it eat? Where is its ecosystem? How does it not compete for space with other things? Some GMs like to think about that. I like to think about that stuff. But a lot of bog standard D&D adventures don't really care about that. And that's fine. If your OSR mentality is, I'm going into the dungeon to get stuff and money to get powerful, then you don't care if there's a griffin in a 10 by 10 room with no possible way of feeding itself. Just kill it. Take its stuff. There's lots of people who like to play like that. I'm not one of them, but there are. So when it's about expectations of the kind of game you're in. If I go into a game that I know is an OSR, hex crawly, dungeon delving kind of game, then okay. I'm not going to criticize the world for, well, you're not making exact ecological sense because where does this creature get its food source? Nah, I don't care about that. Because that's not what the game's about. In this particular case, the game is about going into dungeons, exploring wilderness stuff, seizing treasure, and becoming powerful. Great. I'm in a game right now like that. Axe. Adventure Conquer King. Where that is the stated purpose of the game. You literally become an adventurer, and then you become a conqueror, and then you become a king. By seizing other people's lands and stuff, taking their stuff. But even in that game, I'm playing a character that's motivated by something much bigger, as far as he's concerned. He's a priest, and he believes that he is bringing justice and law to the wilds. That is his purpose. So yeah, he's dungeon delving, and he's exploring, and he's killing things and taking their stuff, and he's getting tough, and he's getting more magic items and all that stuff. But for him, that's not what it's about. And for me, that's not what it's about. For me, it's about pacifying the wilderness in the name of God. Right? All right. Nigel, having internet troubles? Sorry to hear it. Thanks for coming, though. I do have Dragonbane, by the way. And part of this line of thought has to do with the fact that the base rules have a limited palette of about 15 monsters, and I don't think it's a problem. Yeah, you're right. Although, there's... Is it 15? I thought there was more in the main book. Might not have been. But they have the bestiary now as well. Or the bestiary. This is technically you're supposed to pronounce it. They do have the bestiary as well, which has a whole bunch more monsters in it. I really like Dragonbane. Dragonbane is about as rules light as I'm willing to go. Because it still has wonderful detail. I really like it. In fact, as part of a palette cleanser from my super... sim light, stuff I've been drowning in over the past few years, I'm going to start running for my friends the Dragonbane main campaign. What's it called? The Dragon Emperor's something? Whatever. It's in the main book or in the box set. And I'm looking forward to it because it's simple, it's straightforward. However, I'm definitely going to still connect the characters to the campaign setting or get them to find connections, because there has to be an exploration of character. There has to be something at stake. There has to be something that keeps the players wanting to come back for more, that isn't just, yeah, we got another 35 gold pieces, throw it on the pile, I guess. Since a game should be about motivations other than simple monster hunting. I don't mean to imply that there's a one true way. I'm just saying for me. For me, there has to be something other than monster hunting. There has to be something human at stake. There has to be something relatable and universal at stake. Any great story that we've ever told or read or been told or whatever from the beginning of time, the ones that resonate are the ones that are universal. The ones about universal human needs and values, right? Love and hate and justice and revenge and pain and loss and triumph. All of these things are universal to people, no matter who you are, right? In some form. We all experience loss. We all know what that means. We all experience victories in our life. We all know what that means. We know what it means to love. We know what it means to hate. Shakespeare is the perfect example of this. If you read any Shakespeare story, the reason why they've lasted so long, the reason why they are, canon of Western civilization, is because they speak to the human truth, the human reality. Right? So for me in a game, it's the same thing. There has to be a human truth. There has to be a universality of purpose. I think you've just clarified why I bounced off most of the attempts at RPGs. My attempts at RPGs, they've all lacked the human connection motivation. Well, if that's true, then I hope this does help you, and I encourage you to make that change in your next game. It's not hard. You just have to make it personal. And it doesn't have to be complicated at all. Just create a personal connection between your characters and some aspect of the setting. Some aspect that they're going to interact with. It's no point saying, well, you're the son of a duke, and then the duke is 1,000 miles away and you never get there and you never interact with anything to do with the duke or the dukedom or anything related. That's pointless. That has nothing. That's no connection. But if you're a cousin to the innkeeper in the village that you're going to, okay. In the Mines of Phandelver, when I ran it for a bunch of new players, I did that too. One of the characters was a halfling thief. And in Phandelver, there was a halfling family that maybe they were bakers. I don't remember. Something like that. Maybe I'm getting that confused with Dragonbane, but whatever. I made him, I think he was a cousin. I think I made him related. And that little thing, just giving him a personal stay, it didn't dominate the story. It wasn't about a story at all. It wasn't about anything other than giving him a connection. And that was enough, because when they got to Phandelver, the first thing he's like, I got to go see my cousin. And that led into adventure opportunities, because now, well, the cousin, oh, well, we lost this person and he's gone missing, and can you help us? And now there's a personal investment, right? Oh, yes, of course, I'll help you, cousin. It's not just we're hiring you to go find this missing person. It's a relative of mine is missing. That's a bigger deal, right? Make it personal. Make it personal. Monster of the Week expansion had a similar thing of giving a personal connection to the plot, especially with the players that are either the chosen or the wronged. They have something to lose. Yeah, that's an important thing. They have something to lose. Every character should have something to lose and something to gain. Every character should have a goal. Every character should have something that they're looking to do. And you know what? If that's just gets super rich and powerful, that's fine. But even then, I'd be saying, why? Why do you want to be so rich and powerful? People have a reason for wanting wealth and power. The obvious one is revenge. And that's easy. And that's universal. I want to get rich and powerful. I want to become a 10th level fighter so that I can go and kill the guy that murdered my pa. Right? Done. And you've just built in a villain to the campaign now too, at least for that character. And as that villain comes back and starts messing with that character in the foreground or the background of what's going on in the campaign, the other players will get involved and I'll hate that character too. Now you've got a central villain that's born out of a personal connection. This is the way to invest players into what's going on. Make it personal. I have a friend, Ian, old friend of mine, one of the great GMs of our time. And he always made it personal from the get-go. He, no matter what game we were playing, no matter who your character was, in the origin adventures, you would be introduced to a character that wasn't necessarily an obvious villain, but was definitely an antagonist in that they were trying to thwart the goals of the main character, which is you, right? The players. And right away, you're hooked. At least I was. Right away, I'm hooked. Wait a minute, this guy... What do you mean this guy's stopping me from doing this? Well, who's he? And then we're off to the races. And then it's a 3-year campaign as I'm trying to stop this guy who turns out to be this monstrous evil that does all these terrible things. But it started because of a personal connection. Apart from the one full campaign of Ironsworn I played after watching season 2, I still remember the story that evolved from that experience. I'm glad you put it that way, James, because I believe that's very important. Allowing a story to evolve is the most satisfying method. I talk about this in the Broken Empires in the Game Master section, and I'm not the only one. There's many people who talk about this. If you try and impose a story, from on top, from a GM level perspective, from on high, you're strangling your players. You're eliminating their agency. You're taking away their choices because you are the master storyteller and you have an idea of what the story should be. But if you are doing that, then you are, whether you know it or not, you are railroading your players down a particular path because you know how the story is supposed to end. You can run games this way. There are many people that do. There are many players that play this way and know no different. And to them, they want to experience a story. Fine. That's fine. All I'm saying is that is not the true power of the RPG. Telling a story is not the power of an RPG. Experiencing an evolving narrative through participation of everybody. And I don't mean with meta currencies to change what the GM has said or to alter the setting with a special fate point or something. No, I mean just by your actions, you change the world. You are pushing on the world with your actions and the world pushes back. And by doing that, conflict and drama, which is story, that is story. And it emerges. Automatically, it emerges. And after the session, you look back and you saw what emerged. And I, as the GM, now I am surprised by what happened. And I want to be surprised. As a GM, I don't want to know what's going to happen. Why would I do that? I'm not one of these crazy people that opens a new novel and flips to the back to read how it ends. Maybe some of you do, and you're crazy people. I want to experience the mystery. I want to discover it as I go. As a GM as much as a player. So to impose a story, no, that doesn't get you there. You know, it does create a particular play style and a particular play experience that I've had many, many times from both sides of the screen, and which many people very much value. I'm just saying that that particular style doesn't use the tools of the RPG in a way that allows it to shine the way it's meant to, right? Anyway, blah, blah, blah. On the death thing, one of my favorite campaigns happened because we TPK'd in the beginning of the Pathfinder campaign. Right, so you can have that. You can have one of your favorite experiences being everybody dies. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but it can be, right? And that's the power of the OSR, right? To go back and to be perfectly fair, that is the power of the OSR. If you don't get too connected to your character, then the fun of the game is let's see how far these pawns get before they get brutalized. That can also be fun. Please understand me, OSR people. I'm not telling you you're doing bad, wrong fun. I'm just saying that for me, it's got to be about something other than gaining power. But I get it. I get the fun of a classic old school dungeon delve or like a funnel, right? Like DCC does or Shadow Dark does, where you play a bunch of 0 levels peasants and they got to go through, they got 2 hit points and they're all going to be slaughtered except for the one that emerges to become a character. That's super fun. I've run those before. They're super fun. But eventually those 0 level people are going to become characters, and those characters are going to need to want something besides pure survival, right? So it all comes back to that. But it can be fun. Regarding death, season 1 was about the half-orc guy until he died unexpectedly and Simon had to take over. So that's very good, very, very good example of what I have been talking about. First thing that happens in season 1 of Me, Myself, and I, of the main show. That's the problem I have. That's what I get for naming my channel the same thing as the show. The very first episode, Simon's whole thing is he's trying to save his friend from being executed. He fails. First episode, he fails. Vilborg, the half-orc, gets killed in a desperate escape attempt. And now Simon's on his own. I didn't know that was coming. So you're right. I thought that season 1 was going to be about Simon and Vilborg and their adventures together. Surprise! And what happened? 22 episodes later, this amazing epic story had taken shape. If I had tried to impose from the very beginning a story about Vilborg and Simon where they do this and then this happens and they wind up here, none of the awesomeness of season 1 would have ever happened. None of it. I would have never seen it. It would have never come to pass. So again, it's evidence of what I'm talking about. Let the things emerge naturally, for better or for ill. And it's not always going to be brilliant. It's not always going to be awesome. There are better episodes than others in my show, just like there are in a campaign I run. There's going to be better sessions and not so good sessions. That's okay. If the overall experience is positive, that's what you want. I feel that when I started doing more solo RPG play, the creation of the experience was better than just combat or monsters. I learned a lot from Trevor. That style started to appeal to me tremendously. Good. Thank you, Vortek. Yeah, it is about a total experience. And again, that's what I try and get across in the Broken Empires. The idea is when you're playing in the Broken Empires, it's about the total experience of being in a world. It's about the journey. It's about the combat. It's about the magic. It's about the divine. It's about the places you go. It's about the things you're trying to achieve. It's about the political situation. It's about the personal situation. It's about being alive and in a vibrant fantasy world that feels real. and the mechanics try and help that when they can. Sometimes mechanics get in the way, and you as a GM have to know when that is and make a judgment call and say, well, you don't need mechanics for this. And that's perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine. Regarding deadly threats, that's one of the reasons I'm being drawn back to BRP-based games, including Dragonbane, because the risk needs to be in-game real. Yeah. I have played games before where death was off the table. And, again, there's exceptions to every rule, Superhero games. I'm not a big superhero game guy. But I feel like most superhero games benefit from having death off the table because it's part of the genre, right? Superheroes don't get killed. They get beaten down and knocked down and set back and hurt, and the things they're trying to achieve fail, and they have to regroup and try again. That's part of the genre. So, Batman having his head blown off by a bullet fired by a minion of the Joker. That's not exactly in genre. So the mechanics have to support the genre. And, D&D, the genre originally was an OSR style. It was your pawns on a board and you're looking for treasure. It evolved or devolved, depending on who you talk to, into fantasy heroics and epic storytelling and all this stuff. So death should be off the table because fantasy heroes don't get killed by random goblin strikes. It's genre. You decide on your genre and you go from there, right? As long as the mechanics support the genre, you're good. The third level D&D thing is legit, hence why Critical Role starts campaigns at level 3. Yeah. Yeah. I am running some friends. I think I've talked about this before. Later this month. Ooh, how exciting. We have friends in Miami, and they're desperate to play. They've never played a game before. So I'm going to run them, probably in Shadowdark because it's so easy. But here's my problem. They need to start off level 1 because they need to have the experience. But Shadowdark is a classic OSR game in that it expects high lethality. It expects players to be able to be thinking people who know better and don't make stupid mistakes. But guess what? New players make stupid mistakes all the time, and OSR systems are very unforgiving. I don't want to have to step in and fudge the rules just to make sure they don't get killed. Because here's the thing. I do not want them to have an experience in their very first game ever, after years of listening to me talk about it, and they walk into the first room of the dungeon and they get ambushed by goblins and they're all dead. I mean, we could roll up new characters at that point, but again, that's not the approach I want to take. I'm not taking death off the table, but I want to make sure that they've got a chance. Now, in a game like Shadowdark, the only way to do that at all is to give them max hit points, and even then, good luck. If you're playing a mage, 4 hit points. Maybe if you've got a con bonus, you're up to maybe 6. 6 hit points. Some goblin shoots you with an arrow and rolls a 6. That's it for you. Yes, you're not dead at 0 under the Shadowdark rules. You make your death saves and stuff. They're not called that, but you know what I mean. But I'm torn by this. Do I start them at a higher level? I don't want to do that. I want to have them have the classic first level experience, but I don't want to have them have the classic first level TPK experience. So I get why people start at third level. I don't think that's what I'm going to do. I think what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to start them at first level, going to give them max hit points, but I'm going to, I'm not going to fudge any dice rolls, but I'm going to dial back the aggression of the setting that they're going into, right? They're going to be going into some sort of like ruin. So I'll just, I will play the monsters a little more stupid than I normally would to give the players a chance because they're new. They need a helping hand. I'm not gonna do the work for them, but I want them to have fun. I want them to enjoy this, and that means they got to work for their victory, just like anybody has to work for their victory. I can't give it to them, but I don't want them to be slaughtered out of the gate either. That's no fun. It's fun though. I'm excited about running new players again. It's been a long time, and new players are great because they don't have any of the jaded nonsense that us old guys have, and they come up with new things. They come up with approaches to problems and to solutions to problems that maybe I don't. And that's awesome. That's another reason why I don't want to impose something like a story or anything like that off the top, because I want to see how these guys react, right? I'm so looking forward to it. I can't wait. I find difficult the debilitating mechanics when health and when hit HT and wounded to manage when playing with a group. Hold on. I find difficult the debilitating mechanics when HT and wounded to manage when playing with a group. How to manage the pace when the others want to move on. I don't know if I understand your wording, Len. Hit me up again, if you could, with a little clarification so I know what you're referring to. I have all of the Pendragon editions, and they vary a little bit with each version. This last version has the most changes. Okay, actually, I have heard that, and I know that Call of Cthulhu 7 also has big changes from any other edition. I don't think Call of Cthulhu needed a new edition. I don't think they do, but whatever. Hornmaster Woot! Pendragon is in its 6th edition, I believe it is. What we need is the Broken Empires. Where is it, Trevor? It's on the way. It's on the way. I had said before that I was hoping the game would be, the rule book would be available in March as a PDF. I don't think it's going to happen. We're working every single day on this thing, and we're working as fast as we can, and it's looking great. But it's not ready yet. But it will be. It'll be ready when it's ready, and it'll be great. Hardmaster is a tough solo project, but you could tailor it to be survivable. Yeah, you could tailor any game to be survivable. Survivable. Hardmaster doesn't have to be as brutal as a lot of people think it does, either. You know, like, for example, it's comparatively rare in Hardmaster to be killed outright by a single blow. That's pretty rare. Far more likely you're going to be slashed and put into shock, rolling around in pain, which is essentially losing the fight. Same with my game as well. It's almost never that you're killed outright. In fact, I don't think it's, well, I shouldn't say it's not possible. It's almost impossible to be killed outright by the first shot you take. But it's very possible for you to be taken out by the first shot, which means you're dropping in shock and possibly dying, which I know feels like the same thing, but it's not. It's not the same thing. If you're in shock and dying, you can still be saved. You can still stabilize, right? If you're just dead, then, well, that's it. There's no coming back from that. I think you could literally have a campaign with a Broken Empire's character just questing to find formulae, materials, and items to create alchemy projects. You absolutely could. Yeah. You absolutely could. If those are your goals, then that's what you're trying to achieve. Then the GM's job is to put obstacles in your way to make it interesting for you to achieve them and to have the world push back. Already I'm thinking all these ideas about how to run that game. Rival alchemists trying to beat you in a race to the one reagent that grows in this one forbidden spot, and it only blooms once a year, and you can only harvest it like under the full moon or something. So there's a race with a rival to get there in time, and kind of a Indiana Jones Belloc competition kind of thing. I could see that happening. All kinds of good stuff. Appreciate the overview. My wife was listening and very interested. Good. Well, I hope I'm pleased. You must have enjoyed the delicious In Dungeon anime then. I don't know what that is. Is Dragonbane the one where you start at level 0 commoners and then your town is attacked and then you gain level 1 abilities during the beginning? No. That sounds more like a gauntlet. Is that what they call it in DCC and Shadow Dark? A funnel. That's it. A funnel. That sounds more like a funnel. Dragonbane, you start level 1, and you're fairly competent at the things you're good at at level 1, which is what I like. But it's not a D&D style game. It's based mostly on RuneQuest, although it's a D20 system. But it's classless. It's levelless. All things I approve of, just like the Broken Empires is. It's skill based, and you have set hit points, which is your con score, and you can buy talents that increase. It's just like the Broken Empires. You could buy talents that increase it, but bit by bit, it's not at all the same D&D experience where you're 0 to hero. You start competent, and you get incrementally better as you go, which is why it's even more important to have a character that's about something other than becoming powerful, because in a game like Dragonbane, or RuneQuest, or Mithras, or the Broken Empires, or Hardmaster, your advancement is incremental, so you don't get those satisfying leaps between levels where all of a sudden you get a new feat, or you get more hit points, or you get special abilities. Ha! I'm now level 5. I get 2 attacks. Brr, 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 brr. You don't have that. So, because you don't have that endorphin rush when you level up, You need the game to be about something else, and that has to be about goals. That has to be about personal connections. So say we all. This is my theory. This is the hill I'm dying on. Characters should have personal connections to the setting. One true way. For the Broken Empires, I'm sure you covered it, but I forget how weather is integrated with journeys. Weather tables for each region. There are weather tables for each region, although weather is one of those things that is sort of up to the GM to decide for themselves how influential it should be. There's two types of travel in the Broken Empires. There's the journey system, and there's the hex march system. The journey system is the largest system. It's the default one. It's the more abstract system. Weather is a product of fatigue that you've taken over the days you've traveled, because it's more abstracted. So the GM is free to describe the weather. Like, if the players go a leg of the journey, which is what it's divided up into legs, and they've gone for, say, 4 days, and the fatigue roll was really bad, so everybody takes a bunch of fatigue. Well, the GM can use weather can use that fatigue roll to inform, the GM can use weather to inform the reason why the fatigue roll went bad. He could say, oh, you guys took 5 fatigue. Oh, well, clearly there was a big storm that rolled through over the past couple days that made it a real slog to get through, for example. When you're doing a hex march, you determine the weather every single day, because that has a daily effect. But a hex march is a completely different system. It's more akin to a classic hex crawl, where you're going like 2 hexes a day, and you have to do random encounters, and you have to blah blah blah. But you all do that stuff. So weather is more of a granular thing in the hex march system than it is in the journey system. Shadowdark does the 0 level gauntlet games if you survive the new level 1. Yes, that's true. Or it can be as an option. It would be kind of funny to do an Axe campaign, but the Conquering King character is a crazy cartographer who's just upset by the map borders. Look, yeah, sure, why not? Fighting for your beliefs is the core system of Burning Wheel. It absolutely is, and it is one of the great innovations of Burning Wheel. Like it or hate it, and I do both with Burning Wheel. I both like it and hate it concurrently. For me, the concept of everything is about pursuing your character's beliefs, that was revelatory. Because Luke Crane, the author, had systematized something that I'd been doing naturally my whole gaming life anyway, right? I had always been making personal connections between my character, and the setting. Always. It was always personal. That's all beliefs do. Beliefs codify and mechanize the way to make personal connections relevant and important. Now, how they do it can get really in the weeds, and that's where a lot of people have problems with it. But the idea of it, I think, is genius. I think that everybody should read The Burning Wheel. Every gamer should read The Burning Wheel. You may hate it. You may love it. But The Burning Wheel really forces you to think outside the box in many, many ways. It forces you to think about a game as something other than maybe you have thought about it in the past, if you're mostly an OSR or D&D kind of person. I think it's really valuable. I think it's really valuable to read all games, because every game has something to offer, even the games I don't like, as I've said many, many times. Brindlewood Bay, which sounds to me like something I probably wouldn't like, has lots to offer. Lots of cool ideas in there, right? Cool philosophies. I think everybody should read every game, but we don't have time or money to do that. I would say if you get a chance to read The Burning Wheel, do so, because it'll make you think differently. And that's always good. Challenging your preconceived notions, challenging the way you see the world is good. It's good. Because either you learn something and you adjust your viewpoint, or you learn something and you solidify your viewpoint. But either way, it's good. Regarding letting a story evolve, how can that happen with adventure paths or modules? Is it just interlinking personal connections like your Fandelver examples? Yeah, that's a really good question, Pitbull. But you've hit on the answer. when I run a module, as I'm doing with Dragonbane, right? I look at the module. Dragonbane is set up really well, too, by the way. I really love it. Basically, how it works is the players come across this mystery, and the mystery says, collect these pieces of this thing. There's 3 pieces somewhere out there. So the adventure gives you, I think, 10 or 12 adventure sites, all linked to the various NPCs in the main area somehow, or linked with rumors or whatever. It's up to the GM to decide where the pieces of the thing are. If you want to make a super fast campaign, then the pieces are in the first 3 places the players go to. If you want to draw it out, you draw it out. Or if you want to randomize it, you can randomize it. Maybe you don't know it's there until the players get there, but in every adventure site, the text says, if the piece of the such and such, of the MacGuffin, we'll call it, if the MacGuffin is here, it's going to be in this room in this site. Brilliant. Genius. It's totally up to each individual GM to make that campaign their own. However, what I need to do is I need to make sure that the player characters are connected to some aspect of the setting they're going into. Now, I'm going to work with them to do that, because I'm not trying to trick them. I'm going to tell them up front, guys, I want you to be personally connected to some aspect of the setting, so let's talk about that. What could it be? And maybe it takes the first session for them to figure that out. That's fine, too. But they'll work with me, and they'll come up with something that means something to them, because that's the key. It can't just mean something to me. They have to be interested in their connection. It has to be something they want to pursue. So what does that mean? It means that I look at the campaign, and now that I know their connections to it, I integrate that. How can I integrate this? Well, if it says, let's say, one player says, I have a brother who lives in this town. Okay, great. You're going to see your brother. Great. Well, maybe one of the adventures says that this key NPC or just some NPC was abducted by bad guys and they were taken over here. Well, surprise, surprise, that NPC is now this guy's brother. You haven't changed anything structurally. It's exactly the same mission. Go and rescue the NPC from the bad guys. Except now that NPC has a personal connection to one of the players. Suddenly the stakes go through the roof because it's personal to that player. So that's what I'm talking about. With Phandelver, yeah, you find aspects of the setting, and a lot of games do this anyway, right? Like a lot of games or adventure modules will have the hooks section at the beginning saying how to hook your players in. And a lot of the times they will say, make it personal, right? Maybe this, maybe that. They try and avoid, a lot of games avoid making it personal because they're trying to keep it generic, which is why you get things like the players have been hired by this guy who wants them to go into the place and find the stuff, and he'll pay them 100 gold pieces for everything they bring out. Yeah, that's fine. It works. It gets them there. But you can do better. But you can only do better if you know what your character's connections are, right? So you got to work with your players with that. Make it personal. I think that advice appears in Eric Edson's book, Story Solution. So it is kind of story, or at least the tools are similar. Yeah, Len, this is something I say in my own GM section. A GM is neither author nor director, but uses the tools of both. A GM's job is not to tell a story, but understanding the elements of story only helps the GM be a better GM. You need to know the tools. You need to understand the tools. You need to use the tools, but use them in a way that's specific to GMing. Right? I talk about this in my book in the GM section quite extensively. For our Pathfinder TPK, it was a module, and we used all the special backgrounds and made our heroes specifically to fit that campaign. And we TPK'd at the start. Yeah, that happens. It does happen. Although I'm surprised. Was it Pathfinder 2? Because Pathfinder 2 is pretty hard to be killed. Because it's dull. Because the system is boring. Because it's all perfectly balanced. And it's dull. Take that, Pathfinder 2 fans. I've had fun. Oh, we kid on this show. I've had fun with Pathfinder 2. But for me, that's always been the criticism. I can't stand the world leveling up with you, just like I hated it in Oblivion and Skyrim. I hate that. First thing I do is get a mod. No level-based world. I want to go where I go, and whatever I find. And I have to deal with it. D&D directed by Quentin Tarantino. Because if the heroes couldn't save the world, the villains will have to, right? They don't want their world eaten by extra-dimensional gods either. That is that is the plot, so to speak, or the setting implications of Necessary Evil by Savage Worlds. Necessary Evil is a superhero campaign, except you're playing the villains because of that exact reason. Because the heroes all get killed, and now there's only the supervillains left, and so they now have to save the world. I always thought that was genius. I've never actually read the campaign. I do have it, but I would love to run that campaign. I just think that's so smart. Thank you for answering all my questions. Time for me to head to bed. Enjoy the rest of the stream, everyone. Thank you, James. Thanks for coming out to play. I hear you on new players. I told you in another live chat I'm running Shadow Dark for my grandsons, right? And it's been amazing. That is awesome. Sorry, Season 1 Simon got heavily injured. He had time to recover. This time is not as flexible when playing in a group. At a point, it's like death even if the character's alive. That can be the case. If you have a situation where if you have a set of mechanics where it takes time to heal wounds, especially if they're bad wounds, like Harnmaster, for example, and you have other characters involved who aren't wounded, there are many ways to handle this. For me, the recovery of that character can be an adventure in itself because they're making daily rolls, and those rolls have things at stake. Either the wound's going to get better, or it's going to get worse, or it's going to get infected. These are tense moments. When I'm GMing a group, if the other characters are not with the convalescing character, then I'm running spotlights. I'm shifting the spotlight. I'm with the group that's doing a thing, and then I shift back to the convalescing character. And I'm giving the convalescing character things to do while they're convalescing. I know that sounds weird, but I'm immersing them in the world. They're still in the healer's bed. You know, maybe they're having delusions or hallucinations. Well, now we play a little bit of those fever dreams. Maybe there's flashbacks to things that are important to that character, or maybe there's hints of what might come in the future in these hallucinations. You can spice that stuff up, right? I've had this exact scenario play out where one of my characters was healing for a week. Now, in that case, he was healing with an enemy in the same cabin in the middle of nowhere. I've told this story before. It was one of the great adventures, and it was healing, but it wasn't about healing. It was about the evolving relationship between these two characters that hated each other and wanted each other dead, but literally did not have the strength to get out of bed. So they had to communicate with each other. It was great. But you're typically right. A lot of GMs could handle that situation where, oh, well, you know what? You're going to be healing for the next week, so just make up a new character or play an NPC, and fine. Whatever, you can do whatever you want as long as everybody's okay with it. It depends on the context, you know? Delicious in Dungeon is about a D&D party getting stranded in a dungeon with no rations, so they have to eat things in the dungeon. So it's about how do slimes taste, what do they eat, ecosystems. Hilarious. I think I've seen maybe bits of this. Not a big anime fan, even though I've voiced a ton of anime in my career. In the Broken Empires, is any rule for traveling at night? Yeah-ish. Again, journeys, it's abstracted, so day and night is only important as to when the event happens. On a hex march, it's typically a bad idea to travel at night, because it is. Because if you're in the wilderness and you're traveling at night, you're in big trouble. You're gonna fall, you're gonna sprain your ankle, all this stuff. So the assumption is, and this is the same in any hex crawl game, right? The only time people travel at night is if they're driven to an utmost desperation. So it's really an edge case in most cases. What does a mimic eat when no one is robbing the dungeon? Good question. Oh yes, that's connected to this stuff. Yeah, neat. That's neat. Especially when playing Burning Wheel, it's when you can grasp the genius behind the idea that you end up loving to hate. Yeah, exactly. Which is why I say everybody should read the game, even if they never play it, because it looks at things in a different way, which is great. This is going to sound like a drastic pivot considering I've been a Pendragon guy this week, but I love 13 Age idle system for connections. I stole it for a political D&D game I was running. I know nothing about 13 Age, 13th Age. I always get it confused with 7th Sea or 7 Seas. Is 13 Age, is that the one with the escalation die? Where you always put like a D6 or something out, and every round you bump it up and everybody adds that to their numbers? Is that the game that does that? Love the Necessary Evil campaign idea. Wish there wasn't a general supers fatigue so I could find players. Yeah, is there a fatigue in your neck of the woods? I've never, not never, once I played a superhero game once, but again, it's not my genre, it's not my thing, so I'm not super interested in it. But I would run Necessary Evil because it's so different. Oh, you were playing Pathfinder Necessary Evil. Okay, all right, cool. Since our new characters who was second edition were baddies who just lived nearby, the main baddie of the campaign wronged after killing the heroes, so we stormed into town seeing the same. Neat. Have you ever played the Legend of Five Rings RPG? No, I have. There's two versions, right? There's is it the FFG version? That's the latest, and then there was the original. And was the original, not John Harper, who did the original? I'm totally blanking. Legend of Five Rings. No, anyway, I've never played it. It's always been one of those on my periphery, on my radar, because I've been super curious about it. The only thing I've seen is the FFG version. It is FFG, isn't it? I can't remember. Anyway, well, we're at 142, which is a lot. So I think John Wick. Yes, thank you. That's who I was thinking of. John Wick. John Wick did the original. Didn't he? Didn't John Wick also do Houses of the Blooded? I can't remember. Mr. Wick. Anyway, I'm going to go. It's been an hour and 42 minutes. Thanks for joining me again, guys. And as always, if those of you who are watching this on YouTube want to take part in the conversation, consider joining us here on YouTube or as a Patreon member. And then we can all get together and have a nice conversation. So, when is the next one supposed to be? When is the next chat scheduled? Let us see. Next. Oh, well, it won't be next Saturday because I have to do a Comic-Con in New Braunfels, Texas. So I won't be able to do it then. So probably the next stream won't be until the 18th, which is Wednesday. So we will talk to you then, folks. In the meantime, thanks for watching, and thanks for all of your support. I do appreciate it. And the Broken Empires is onwards and upwards, and we're moving forward, and it's looking great, and it's exciting, and the layout's looking good. But it takes the time it's going to take, and that's the way it is. So that is that. All right, thanks, everyone, and I will see you next time.